Henry VIII had always wanted a son, a male heir who would continue and secure the Tudor dynasty. When Henry's second wife, Anne Boleyn, became pregnant with his second child, astrologers, midwives, and royal doctors confidently predicted that she would give birth to a son. Therefore, when Elizabeth was born on September 7, 1533 in Greenwich, the initial reaction was not of joy, but of disappointment. Henry failed to attend his daughter's festivities and parties, establishing a clear example of Elizabeth's upbringing. Although Henry publicly accepted his daughter Elizabeth, she was set aside due to her mother's arrest and execution, which led to her being declared illegitimate. Despite this animosity, she received a royal education and was influenced in her religious views by her father's sixth wife, the Protestant Catherine Parr. Elizabeth's path to becoming queen seemed unlikely, as both her siblings had to die without heirs for her to become queen. Her younger brother Edward became king when Henry passed away in 1547, but he died at a young age. Her sister Mary inherited the throne in 1553, a reign marked by her attempts to restore Catholicism in England and the persecution of Protestants, earning her the nickname Bloody Mary. Elizabeth was careful and conformed during her sister's rule. Still, she was imprisoned for 2 months and placed on house arrest for her alleged connections to the Wyatt Rebellion, which aimed to prevent Mary's marriage to Spanish King Philip II. When Mary died childless in 1558, Elizabeth I ascended the throne and was crowned Queen of England on January 15, 1559. Let's examine the structure of government during her reign. As the Queen of England, Elizabeth had the utmost authority and rule. She could call and dissolve Parliament, declare war and make peace, appoint and dismiss ministers and judges, and determine who to marry and who to name as a successor. Below the Queen was the royal court, a group of over 1,000 people that surrounded the Queen wherever she went. The court included personal servants, entertainers, nobility, ambassadors, foreign visitors, and other influential government members. The Queen always brought her court along, even when traveling around England in her royal progress. Inside the court was the all-powerful Privy Council, a group of around 10 to 20 influential figures that advised the Queen and managed the administration of government. These were the Queen's most trusted advisors and ministers. To decide who to include in her government, Elizabeth used a system of patronage, which meant that she could give and take away titles and positions of power to whoever she pleased in exchange for their loyalty. This system was quite successful, as economic instability at the time further increased loyalty to the Queen. The Privy Council also helped to manage relationships between the Queen and the rest of Parliament. This system was split into the House of Lords, comprised of noblemen and bishops, and the House of Commons, which was elected. They passed laws and approved taxes. Elizabeth didn't call Parliament much during her reign, only summoning them 13 times, most of the time to grant her taxes. On the local level, Elizabeth appointed noblemen to the Lord Lieutenants, who governed the counties and raised local militias, and the Justice of Peace, who kept law and order in their localities. Let's take a look at some of the key figures in government. Make sure to remember these names. William Cecil was Elizabeth's most influential and longest-serving minister and advisor. He became Secretary of State in 1558 and made Lord Burghley in 1571. Cecil was also Lord Treasurer and responsible for the government's money. He was loyal to Elizabeth and had a say on several issues we'll cover in future episodes, such as religion and foreign affairs. Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, was an ambitious advisor and Elizabeth's closest minister during the start of her reign. Their relationship was so intimate that rumors spread of a secret romance between them, further aggravated by the unexplained death of Dudley's wife. He was a determined Protestant and a little freaky, having several affairs, scandals, and pregnancies within the court, leading to his banishment. Francis Walsingham was Elizabeth's spymaster. He attended the Queen's security and ran a network of spies and agent provocateurs, who were people employed by Walsingham to encourage suspicious people to plot against her to justify their arrest and execution later. Although benefiting from her unanimous power, Elizabeth inherited the throne at a terrible time. Religious instability, the loss of Calais, the high cost of war, epidemic disease, and poor harvest during her sister's reign had created an atmosphere of despair and crisis. The arrival of a young and promising queen created a sense of hope in England. Yet, Elizabeth had one significant problem. She was a woman. Of course, this was not actually a problem. Still, Elizabeth had to overcome the prejudice and stereotypes surrounding female rulers at the time, especially after the disaster of the later stages of her sister Mary's reign. Given the widespread belief that women couldn't rule effectively, there was pressure on Elizabeth to find a husband who could rule for her. Also, if Elizabeth died without an heir, there would be a risk of civil war. The Privy Council and Parliament pressured Elizabeth to marry and produce an heir as soon as possible. But who could she possibly marry? Let's take a look at the contenders. Early in her reign, Philip II, the most powerful man in the world and her sister's former husband, proposed to Elizabeth, but she declined, as a Catholic king would be unacceptable to strict Protestants and Puritans, who feared a return to Catholicism and Philip's influence in English politics. If you want to learn more about Philip II, I have a whole video about him. There was also the French king's brother and heir to the throne, Francis, Duke of Anjou, but he was French. Other foreign contenders included Eric of Sweden and Philip II's brother, Charles of Austria, but Elizabeth rejected them all. At home, many within Parliament hoped to be contenders to marry Elizabeth, but the only person who actually had a chance was her favorite advisor and possible crush, Robert Dudley. As I mentioned before, he was an ambitious and good-looking man, and Elizabeth spent a lot of time with him. But he was already married, so when his wife unexpectedly was found dead, it didn't help his cause. So, who would Elizabeth marry? Who would fulfill the role of husband and king for Elizabeth? Drumroll please. No one. Parliament and the Privy Council repeatedly asked the Queen to marry and name an heir, but she would always refuse. When they asked Elizabeth to find a husband in 1563, she declined to discuss the matter any further. Elizabeth would be married to England. Also, she wanted to live and die a virgin, and having to choose between any of her contenders would have caused a lot of division within her court. If Elizabeth were to marry Dudley, his scandals would haunt her. If she were to marry a Catholic, like Philip, she would anger the Protestants and vice versa. And if Elizabeth married a foreign leader, she would have been drawn to unnecessary wars and lose sole control of English affairs. Therefore, Elizabeth decided to stay as the Virgin Queen, placing England's stability and security over the dynasty's continuation. Elizabeth and Parliament fought on more issues than just marriage. They also clashed over matters of religion, freedom of speech, and monopolies. Elizabeth managed to mediate these problems, but towards the end of her reign in 1601, Elizabeth faced a threat within her own Privy Council in what would later be known as the Essex Rebellion. As Elizabeth aged, her grip on Parliament weakened, allowing a new breed of ambitious politicians to rise, including a man known as Robert Devereux, the second Earl of Essex. Despite being close to Elizabeth once, their relationship soured due to her preference for her advisor, Robert Cecil. When Essex married without telling the Queen, his relationship with Elizabeth deteriorated further, culminating in a confrontation in which Elizabeth reportedly slapped him, and in response, he attempted to pull out his sword, resulting in his banishment from court. But he was given a second chance. Essex was appointed Lord Lieutenant of Ireland and told to crush the Irish Rebellion. However, he failed to do so. Ignoring Elizabeth's instructions to stay and fight in Ireland, he made peace with the Irish and returned to England, leading to treason accusations. Consequently, in 1600, a special court stripped Essex of all his positions and placed him under house arrest. Rebellion was his only solution. In 1601, Essex fortified his mansion and gathered his supporters, around 300 loyal rebels. When 4 privy councillors were sent to his house to question him, he held them as hostages and proceeded to march to the centre of London to capture the Queen. The Essex Rebellion had begun. He hoped to march to London, rally the angered population, and dethrone the Queen, but Essex had overestimated his power. Many in the nobility did not want to risk their positions of power, and people in London just didn't care. He was captured, arrested, and eventually executed for treason. The Essex Rebellion is a clear example of Elizabeth's power stumbling by the end of her rule. Regardless, she managed to keep England stable. Thanks for watching. In the coming weeks, we'll discuss the religious landscape of Elizabeth's reign and Mary Queen of Scots. The video after that, we'll see if there was an Elizabethan golden age, and we'll look at Elizabethan society and things such as theatre. And finally, we'll explore English sailors and the escalating conflict with Spain. Also, thank you all who commented on my videos. It's been so wholesome to know that all this effort that I put into researching and editing these videos was worth it, and I hope that the series will at least help or take some pressure off paper too. Make sure to share this video with your classmates, and good luck.